Good morning. I'm going to continue my series on citizenship. Right. So yesterday I actually shared a video of a little speech I gave at a party a few weeks ago after I became a citizen, and I had prepared a few remarks. So this week I'm digging into some of those ideas because I do have ideas on what it means to be a citizen, and specifically to be an American citizen, and specifically to be an American citizen today in this time and place. And it's always been important to me that uh, there's this thread of Americanism that feels very submerged right now, and it's this sort of transcendental thread from Emerson and Thoreau, Alcott, that sort of mid to late 1800s exploration of what it is to be a human. And that conversation was very much framed as, what is it to be part of this still relatively new country of America, right? Emerson traveled the country giving lectures. That was his primary means of, it was his job, right? He had trained for ministry, uh, left the ministry, but still had this sort of instinctual preaching, right? So his lectures are really sermons, even though they aren't presented in the pulpit. By the way, very inspirational for these videos. I look on these videos as sort of proto-essays and uh, preparatory preaching. Proto-sermon, yeah. I'm inspired by the idea of the lecture, the essay, um, and capturing, embodying not just ideas, but actually an experience. So the part of Emerson that I want to talk about today in the context of citizenship is, I think, maybe his most famous and most misunderstood idea, which is self-reliance, right? Famous essay titled Self-Reliance. If you are an American of roughly my age, you probably read it in high school. And I think, unfortunately, the term has become or became wrapped up in the idea of um, what Thatcher called uh, the loss of society, right? So Margaret Thatcher said there is no such thing as society, right? What she meant was that, I'm going to put words in her mouth, and not favorably, but what she meant was the idea of society was a crutch, and at best a crutch, and at worst a hindrance. I think that is what our general cultural atmosphere is today as well, is that government, civics, organizations, that these are things that are there that at best cover up the weakness of the individual, and at the worst prevent the individual from manifesting. And so when we say self-reliance, it's easy to think that what we mean is sort of another cliche, rugged individualism. But I think it's gotten wrapped up with the idea of sort of Ayn Randian notions that the self is preeminent, and that society, again, at best is a crutch, and more often is a hindrance. That could not be further from what I think, and further from what I think Emerson meant, because what do you mean by self, and what do you mean by reliant? Well, if you've watched any of my other videos, then you know that the concept of self is itself transcendent, right? The idea of the self, most of what we talk about here is the illusion of the concrete self, and Emerson was familiar with that idea. I'm not going to say that Emerson was a Buddhist, although he was aware of Buddhist and Hindu writings about the transience of the self. But the term transcendent is absolutely appropriate. He understood that the individual self is part of a larger mystery. That first principle of practice that I talk about, that what we do when we meditate is understand the boundary, actually the boundarylessness of the self, and sort of the precipitant nature of the consciousness of the cosmos. I think Emerson would be entirely familiar with that idea, and that's what he means by self-reliance. The reliance part is the maturity and stability to process that kind of experience. It doesn't mean that the self-reliant person has a bank account that enables them to live with indifference to the suffering of their fellow humans, or indeed generosity or graciousness or politeness. That is not what Emerson meant by self-reliance, and it's not what I mean when I talk about the self-reliant citizen. The citizenship project is sort of the idea of the true understanding of the individual and the necessity of civics, the necessity of an environment that recognizes that we are all participant in this project of humanity, which for me is the project of enlightenment and awareness and consciousness. And from that comes this set of behaviors, right? So self-reliance is an immersion in the authentic presence. Again, I think this is absolutely from Emerson. I don't think I'm making this up. Can you imagine Thatcher or any of our current crop of politicians saying, I hate to pick on Thatcher, but she was the politician of my childhood. She said things like, if you're riding the bus after 30, you're a loser. Well, fuck that, right? Public transport is one of the primary manifestations of an enlightened civilization. I think I should be able to step outside my door. Anyone should be able to step outside their door and know that within 7 minutes there'll be a bus that will take them to some kind of centralized hub from where they could go anywhere. At the end of this series, I'm going to run through sort of an exuberant celebration of the potential of citizenship. And one of those is the ability to get on a bus, get to a train station, and go to Manitoba from Pittsburgh. I'm not sure where Emerson would fall on that, but I think it's really important to take the idea of self-reliance and recognize what the self is, which is this sort of authentic presence that arises from the previous moment into the future, non-reified, non-concretized, that interacts with the mystery of the cosmos. Emerson talked about that giant eyeball. We're all just a big eyeball. And then citizenship and society comes from the necessary coordination and integration of beings who exist in that awareness. Because you can't walk around as a translucent eyeball. You have to be able to go to Starbucks and get coffee. You have to be able to go online and check email. So there needs to be sort of a gradual refinement of actions, but they all come from this reliant self. Again, it's not selfishness, it's actually selflessness. And imagine, if you will, that was really the idea embedded in the Constitution, that the pursuit of happiness is not the pursuit of individual materiality, but is actually the pursuit of understanding the place within the consciousness of the universe, right? For each and every individual self. So, more to come tomorrow. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, etc. Put them in the chat. And then on Thursdays, I pull those out and have general Q&A. So keep your wits about you.